Welcome to the Restoring and Upgrading Kubernetes Clusters in Production. I'd like to turn over to our first presenter today, Frank Barker. Frank, you have the floor.
Super, thank you, Chris, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. And my name, as you heard, is Frank Barker, and I have the honor to be the CEO of Bacula Systems. I'll be joined in today's webinar by one of our co-founders, Arno Lehmann. So what are we covering today? Well, the topic today is Kubernetes and how to back up and perhaps more importantly, restore or migrate Kubernetes clusters. So why you'd want to do that and the benefits. And as we know, Kubernetes is a broad topic, and in this webinar we will cover a lot. However, we have other resources you may wish to access, and we'll tell you how to do that at the end of the session. So, why backup Kubernetes? You know, as we've heard in the past, Kubernetes, that's only for DevOps people or people working with data and applications in the cloud. No, why would we want to back up Kubernetes? Well, that used to be true. However, as containers are increasingly deployed in production environments because of their cost and flexibility advantages over traditional virtual machines, organizations start to become concerned about security and backup, and rightly so. Initially, containerized applications were stateless, for example, HTTP-based applications, and cloud-focused. But today, we see many stateful applications where the data from the activities of one session is saved and used in the next session. If this data is important to you or your organization, you'd better have a good backup strategy for it. So some important considerations specifically for Kubernetes clusters that we need to consider. Firstly, on the technology side, Kubernetes environments are by their very nature very dynamic and consequently complex to back up. Secondly, there's a people side to consider. You need to be very agile with your backup products because you need a lot of flexibility to match the Kubernetes development and backup teams' needs. And thirdly, I think we'd all agree that deployments of containers and Kubernetes are growing in most organizations and that they are providing more and more critical and stateful systems. Backup teams, the systems administrators and infrastructure management teams in organizations would like to have the ability to integrate this new technology into a broader backup operational plan so that they can manage backup as centrally and as centrally as possible based on the organization's application and data protection needs. So how we do all of this, we will talk about today. But before we go into how we do it with Bacula Enterprise, I need to give you a short backgrounder on Bacula itself. So what is Bacula? So Bacula is used in data centers worldwide as a core and trusted part of the backup strategy of its customers. It's a well-featured product, covers all the options of cloud, physical, virtual, container, and all the hybrid options in between. It does all this through a single platform, which is scalable from a few machines to many thousands of machines, and it's a very flexible and powerful product. You can tell this by the companies who use it, and perhaps more importantly, why they use it. So why do people choose Bacula? Well, people use Bacula for essentially three reasons, or some combination of these three. The first reason is that we can cover a large number of technologies and manage them all from a single platform. This is particularly important for managed service providers or people with complex and growing data and infrastructure requirements, like NASA or Rackspace or other managed service providers you see in this slide. The second reason is the rapid recovery times that Bacula can provide. And in some industries, this is crucial, and we do this well. The third reason is cost reduction. Bacula is very cost effective to use, and in addition, does not charge based on data volume. In fact, we regard data volume, or charging by data volume, as an antiquated hangover from the days when storage was in spinning disks and storage drove complexity. Those days are long gone, but the business models they created are still with us. It's not just data volume costs that are reduced for Bacula. People just find they can do more with Bacula for a lower cost. The modularity of our product gives an insight into its popularity. On the left-hand side of this slide, we have many user interfaces, which can be mixed and matched to the user's needs. Our flagship graphical user interface is bWeb Management Suite. There's a self-service portal interface for customers of MSPs or internal IT teams to enable their customers to configure their own backups, called bCloud service. There's a REST API for automation. We have command line and scripting for those who prefer that. On the right-hand side, we have many storage options. Again, you can mix and match. Tapes, auto changers, virtual tape libraries, disarray, cloud and all of its flavors and providers, appliances, and deduplicating storage devices. In the middle box, we see some of the key solution areas where we have created specific technologies to address specific customer needs. In hypervisors, we have KVM, Hyper-V, Red Hat, VMware, Zen, Proxmox, where we probably have the broadest range on the marketplace. We have modules for Docker and Kubernetes, which we'll talk more about in a few minutes. We have technologies to help bring speed and flexibility, like NDMP or SAN shared storage. We cover the Microsoft world. We have single item restores for virtual machines, Exchange and MDMP. We have different backup products for different needs: automated client-initiated backups, bare metal recovery, data compression, continuous data protection. We also have tools for a number of databases: SAP, HANA, Oracle, MySQL, a whole range. And of course, we have deduplication and our recently patented deduplication technology. It's a wide capability which enables us to do the job cost effectively for most organizations. It's to this portfolio of products that we've recently added container and Kubernetes capabilities, both stateless and stateful. So let's talk about that. Let me hand over now to Arno. Arno?
Yes, thank you, Frank. Hello, everybody. Well, I'm going to talk a bit about the technical side and the Kubernetes specific side of our recent addition to our portfolio. And the most essential fact here is that our Kubernetes module is completely integrated in between what we do with Bacula at the core of our product and how Kubernetes works. So we can back up all parts of the Kubernetes environment, either from inside or outside of the Kubernetes cluster through our single platform. That is particularly important, of course, in cases where a Kubernetes cluster or environment, which may consist of many clusters actually, is used in a production system and can also be very important when upgrading clusters. Essentially, it gives another alternative to move workloads around between particular environments and parts of the environment. And of course, the core that we are coming from is being able to restore data in case of the system becoming unusable. And we do that as well with the Kubernetes, and all of that we are doing, as far as I know, as the first company who actually provides that sort of a solution. So we can back up all the relevant parts of Kubernetes environment. That includes, of course, deployments, individual pods, complete services, and also persistent volume claims. Of course, the volumes underlying that, the data volumes themselves, can also be backed up and restored. And as we're doing that through the regular Kubernetes ways, it will be seen that it is also possible to develop procedures to migrate workloads to recover from serious disasters where even the backup infrastructure is affected without extra hassle. Our general architecture, of course, looks kind of like this. Our Bacula Enterprise software is not part of a Kubernetes environment in itself. Of course, there will be some interfaces which we need to work from inside a Kubernetes cluster to get access to all the relevant data. Those are indicated as Bacula pods in this case. Here we see Bacula pods on 2 Kubernetes nodes, all part of a single Kubernetes cluster. And the deployment of the pods happens as needed automatically by our software infrastructure. And those pods give us the access options and the access to data and configuration information, where it is needed and where it is coming from, without the administrator having to individually configure that. The summary of our features, which we can do with Kubernetes, is pretty straightforward in a way, where straightforward means easy to understand for a Kubernetes administrator. We can, of course, back up the Kubernetes cluster resources and its configuration. We can restore those configuration resources individually or in a bulk restore per namespace if needed. We can restore those backed up data to local directories, to local storage, so they can be adapted as needed and moved around in case that becomes necessary. We also do back up the persistent volumes that are holding persistent data, which becomes part of the Kubernetes cluster and may be a big problem to back up in a traditional way. And it is also possible to restore those persistent data to local data directories to allow, for example, to migrate or to investigate. And also quite important in many workloads that we're seeing, this allows you to actually use production data in a tiered staging environment. For example, using your regular backups of the Kubernetes production workload to create your lab systems or your test environments. We can do that, of course, with, as Frank indicated, with our different storage backends, and we can have the Bacula software deployed in different hosted environments, such as Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Platform. We can use either those platforms to run the Bacula software itself. Of course, it's also possible to use those platforms to run Kubernetes environments, which can have an overlap, but does not necessarily have to. So it is possible, in particular, to back up the workloads that are running, for example, in a Google Cloud Platform environment, and to back that up with the Bacula infrastructure running in Microsoft Azure, making perhaps use of Google Cloud Storage for those purposes, or Amazon S3. So eventually, those different tools and options allow companies to create not only a very flexible and widely spanning backup and recovery environment, but it also prevents them from becoming locked into a particular vendor's environment. Because migration from one vendor to another vendor, from one service provider to another service provider, becomes just a matter of routine restores. It's very easy to move workloads around without actually having those different environments being interfacing with each other. Of course, it is also possible to extend that even more by, for example, having Bacula infrastructure running in private cloud environments, as well as in the traditional server-based, hosted systems. So what we're seeing for a long time now in the IT industry is that in particular large environments are making use of virtualization to a very large extent by now, where in recent years we have seen many different hypervisor families becoming used. Particularly very often we see different hypervisor families inside the same organization, and more recently even, of course, containers became one of the options to flexibly run IT environments. That in particular becomes interesting with those software environments where traditionally rather expensive software is in place, like databases, where vendor flexibility provides ways and tools to essentially break out of existing lock-in situations. We claim that with our solution, which is adaptable to those different environments and works with many different software solutions, it is very easily possible to build an environment that allows you to make best use of the different options and still retain the flexibility and the choice to make so that IT departments can remain not only flexible, but also can work cost efficiently. Of course, in particular, if things should be cost efficiently, that means they need to be easy to manage and straightforward to manage. And that is, of course, also possible if you are using a single platform for different purposes. For example, if your backup solution is the same backup solution, no matter if you're backing up databases, containers, well, Kubernetes environments, for example, plain physical systems that you may have running. All of that can be integrated under a single roof, and the option to cover all of them with one software product gives, well, makes it possible to keep the resources to actually get real work done and not have to spend too much time on routine work. So we're seeing that the flexibility we offer with our Bacula Enterprise Edition is perfectly suited to agile environments, growing environments, and well, environments under cost and resource strain. So what do we do with all those ways of doing things with our flexibility? Of course, for a traditional Unix system administrator, it is important to have a console interface to things. We're seeing one example here. So we're seeing what we can investigate, or the first step of what we can investigate about a Kubernetes environment where we have our software installed. And that, of course, gives lots of flexibility, very few limitations in accessibility, and of course, is also not perfectly user-friendly to some other users. For those people who prefer a graphical interface or who have to do very complex work, which can be time-consuming with the text interface, we have web interfaces to achieve what needs to be done. Here in this case, we see a quick overview of what a client status might look like. A client that, as we see it here, uses the Kubernetes plugin. For the really important work, that is restoring data and workloads, we are seeing how that can be done using our graphical web interface. Here we have a quick drill down into the Kubernetes environment we have backed up. On the left-hand side, we see one particular pod being marked. And on the right-hand side, we see at the top the different versions that we have in our backups. They were taken at different times. They may represent different states. While below, selected for a restore, we have one particular of those instances selected, and we could now continue restoring that particular system or pod to its previous state, which of course gives you much more flexibility than just replicating current state or taking a number of snapshots that are still on the same storage systems, for example. Here we have all the flexibility we know from traditional backup environments integrated into a containerized orchestrated system. And of course, when we select something to restore, as we have seen before, we have those different options to restore. We can restore directly to a Kubernetes cluster. Of course, a Kubernetes cluster does not necessarily mean it has to be the source cluster the backup was taken on. It can be a different one. For example, an emergency system quickly built up in-house while your production system hosted somewhere else becomes unusable. We can restore the data to a local directory, so a Kubernetes administrator can manually process it and perhaps load it into some individually created containers. All of those options do exist, and they are part of our core offer for the Kubernetes environments. That means that we have, with the Kubernetes plugin, we have the same sort of options that are known to be available with the Bacula Enterprise Edition and its specific modules and plugins. We can really cover a complete range of systems, different hypervisors, different hardware-based systems, different operating systems, different applications like databases, mail systems. All of that can be backed up and restored with one single platform. And the options are essentially the same for all of them. Restore to the original location, restore to an alternative system of the same, well, functionality, same sort of platform, or restore to something completely different, or just restore it as plain files. And all of that, by being able to be done in the same way with the same processes, means that it is not very tricky to do that. There's not many particular processes to learn and procedures to develop. You can all do that. Once you've done it for one of them, essentially you know how to do it with all of them. We can do that without having a license or subscription model, which is based on data volume or processor units or something. the whole environment, once built up, is easily scalable, can be changed and developed over time into probably unexpected at the beginning directions and can adapt to changing environments. So if you want to know more about what we do with Kubernetes, we do have some resources available. As of today, I believe we have our Kubernetes white paper available on our website. We also do have the regular documentation available on request. We have some pages on our website regarding containerization environments, starting with plain Docker systems, up to the Kubernetes ones, of course. Later on, you will be able to download this webinar as we are recording it. And of course, if you need more in-depth information or actually want to try things out, it is possible to contact our sales representatives who will then arrange for all the needed necessary steps. So at this stage, I hope I managed to give a quick overview of how straightforward Kubernetes backups can be with us. I hope I gave a little bit of insight into how we actually work on the technical side, how that integrates into existing environments, into changing environments. And if there are any questions, we are happy to answer them. So type ahead in the Q&A section and we will pick that up and see them. Thank you for your attendance for now.
We are now transitioning into our Q&A session. As a reminder, please navigate to the bottom of the Zoom and open the Q&A pod to type your question in and send it in. We do have a few questions already in the queue, so we're going to go ahead and start. Our first question is, from what date is this available?
So let me take that one, Arno. So we're actually shipping today. So the product's available today. We announced it a couple of weeks ago and it's now shipping. So it's available now to those people who want it. We particularly see the demand coming from existing Bacula users who are working in the Kubernetes and container environments. That's the first demand, but it's available today.
Thank you very much, Frank. We have another question. How much does it cost?
So, Arno, probably I should take that one as well. So,
yes, please do so.
So what we have done with the Kubernetes is we actually think it will be part of someone's overall infrastructure backup and restore requirements. And so rather than an isolated single piece. So we have priced this such that users of Bacula Enterprise Edition at bronze level and above will have this capability free of charge. So it's available free of charge to Bacula Enterprise Edition users at bronze level and above. So I think that's pretty attractive.
Thank you so much, Frank. We have a question. Where can I download the white paper?
So let me take that one as well, Arno. So the white paper is available on the Bacula Systems website. You'll see the banners flashing across for different aspects of our capability and different focus areas that we address. And one of those is Kubernetes. And if you click onto that, it'll take you straight to the white paper and available to download from the website. It's a nice white paper, actually, very, very good white paper.
Thank you very much. We have a question. Which BEE myomial version is needed for this Kubernetes plugin to be included?
I think it's 12.2.0. Yeah, just checking here. Yeah, 12.2.0. So I jumped in there, Arno. You probably knew that already.
Yes, I was about to mention exactly that, with the addition that that version is the one that we are also in the process of releasing right now, essentially.
Excellent. And that is all the questions that we have in our queue.
So let me take it back then, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We've run through quite quickly our capability and what we're doing. This webinar is part of a series of webinars we're doing to explain some of the capability we have as we make new announcements. If it spurs any questions or you have anything you'd like further address, please feel free to contact us through the Bacula Systems website with the Contact Us, pose any questions, or if you go on the website, someone may pop up there and you can actually ask your question in real time. So thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you can see that Bacula Systems is a very broad product range, and that Kubernetes and container capability, basically the future of many parts of the virtualization of customers' enterprise infrastructure, is something we can really address today. And unlike just about anybody else in the marketplace, we've taken a lead here, and we'd like to encourage you to come test us. And feel free to do that by contacting us first on our website. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today, and I wish you all a good day. Thank you.
And thank you, Frank. I want to thank Frank and Arno for presenting today's material, and thank you for attending Restoring and Upgrading Kubernetes Clusters in Production. This does conclude today's session. You may now disconnect.